Webinar. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. I want to thank the NACA for hosting this webinar today, where we're going to be talking about free senior center farmers markets during COVID-19. I also want to thank my colleague, Melanie Jukes, who's going to be co-piloting today's session. I will let her introduce herself in a minute, but want to thank her for joining us today. And what's kind of cool about Melanie and I is we have both been in the Salt Lake County, Utah Extension Office for about a decade together as colleagues. So we found some pretty interesting and unique opportunities to do some collaborative programming together, which has been really wonderful. I want to just make sure that everyone knows that we are not going to go into extensive details about this program background, but that this program was recently published in the Journal of NACA. It's in volume 15, issue 2, which is the December of 2022 issue. So if you have any questions, or if you want to contact me or Melanie with any additional information, that is available for you, and you're always more than welcome to contact us personally as well for any follow-up conversation. So without further ado, I want to go ahead and turn the baton off to Melanie, let her introduce herself, and she's going to talk about some of the nutritional implications of this program. So thanks, Melanie.
Thanks, Katie. So I have been with Utah State University Extension for 15 years now, and have been in Salt Lake County for a little over 13. And my primary program areas are actually in nutrition, food preservation, and personal finance. So I overlap a little bit with Katie on the nutrition side of things, where that overlaps with horticulture. So we're excited to talk to you a little bit about that.
Okay, great. So I think we'll go ahead and get started. And what I'm going to do is to hopefully successfully share my screen here. And Melanie, if you don't mind just letting me know in a second if we're on the right, let's see, hold on one second. Presenter view, does that look okay on your end?
I'm seeing the PowerPoint one with the slides on the side, so not presenter, or sorry, not the audience view.
All right, let me try again. Let's see. Let me stop share real quick.
Yeah, this happens often, huh?
Hopefully that pulls up. Let's see, let me X out of that and go to.
I learned a trick the other day, Katie. If it happens again, in your presenter view screen that's mostly black, in the top left, there's a display option, and you can click on that to switch it.
Display settings. Okay, perfect. Give me 1 second.
I'll go ahead and start if that's okay while you're pulling it up.
Why don't you go ahead and start? That would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, so we're just going to talk a little bit about why seniors are a target population and the food security needs of seniors. So according to one study, there's approximately 5.3 million seniors, which is about 7.3% of the United States senior population, that were considered food insecure in 2018. So that was 18, prior to the pandemic. And food insecure basically means that access to food is limited or uncertain. And in Utah, almost 11% of adults ages 60 or older are considered food insecure. And in Salt Lake County specifically, which is the most populated county in Utah, seniors comprise approximately 11% of the population. So, it's definitely a good chunk of our target or of our audience, right, out there in the community. Seniors who are food insecure are disproportionately low income. They often suffer from chronic health conditions such as obesity, diabetes, and hypertension, which are directly and indirectly related to food. And in addition, the older adults that have the chronic conditions that are food insecure, they have higher healthcare costs than older adults with chronic conditions that are not food insecure. So, healthcare is another big aspect of their need. And, good food really matters for all of us, especially for those who are managing chronic illness, and especially for those who are food insecure. However, of course, the ability to afford fresh produce is limited. Food banks and pantries are increasingly serving as a regular source of food among low-income households. So that's been happening for over 12 years now, that it's just become an increasing portion of a regular source of food. However, the diet quality of food pantry users is pretty low, and a lot of studies have shown that. And there's a lot of work, especially in extension, being done around helping the food pantries to have better foods. And a lot of it has to do with, just low intake of fruits and vegetables from those who consume foods from food pantries. And there's other diet quality measures as well. So, this audience, particularly seniors who are food insecure with chronic health conditions that are using food pantries, probably really aren't getting that good food that makes a difference in their overall health and their management of their chronic illness. So I'm going to turn it back to Katie, who has had a really great solution with her extension program to help these partners.
Okay, and are you able to see anything, even if it's just a presenter mode?
Yep, I just see like the PowerPoint program.
Perfect. Okay, so we're back on course here. Fantastic. Okay, so one of the things that we wanted to do is to figure out how we could fill and service some of this need as a Master Gardener program. We have a very vibrant Master Gardener program in Salt Lake County. Although we had some ebbs and flows in terms of our number of active status volunteers, we were somewhere in the range of about 460 active status pre-COVID. We shrunk down to about 250 during COVID, but we've bounced right back up to about 350, 400 active status since COVID. So we have a really large group of people who provide thousands of volunteer service hours every year. So we felt collectively as a program, we could probably have an impact on this if we were able to design a program to specifically target this population. So just a little bit of the genesis and evolution of the program. Starting in spring of 2014, USU partnered with Salt Lake County Adult and Aging Services to launch something called the Meals Plus program. And this program is really good in concept and idea. What we were trying to accomplish was to deliver fresh produce to Meals on Wheels clients through regular meal delivery services provided by the Meals on Wheels drivers. In reality, we came to learn that most of these patrons were chronically ill. Many of them were on multiple medications, and so they had appetite suppression and had very, very limited ability to cook and break down raw ingredients in the kitchen. So we were getting a lot of reports back from the drivers that sometimes bags of produce that were dropped off for the previous delivery were completely untouched by the patrons. And so we needed to kind of rethink the program and how we could target this population more effectively. This was some of our early garden areas. We have several garden spots that we off and on, year to year, grow on at Wheeler Historic Farm, which is a Salt Lake County Parks and Recreation owned and maintained facility. And you can see we just have a lot of diversity in what it is that we're growing here. And another picture a little later in the season was with some of our warm season crops. And so early on, the Meals Plus program, this is what it looked like, where we would meet out at our garden spaces. I believe it was once a week, and would put together these bags of fresh produce. We had labels on the bags that would tell the patrons what it was that they were receiving if they were unsure. And these would get delivered out to the Meals on Wheels recipients. There's a couple other close-ups there. This was
real quick, Katie. We're
yes.
not seeing your PowerPoint advancing. It's just stuck on like the PowerPoint editing.
Uh-oh, we're having issues here. Let me try to stop share. And I'm going to try to reshare. I've got a couple of these open and I'm wondering if that's part of. Okay, how does that look?
There you go. Yep.
Perfect.
Yep. I
Okay.
can see the horticulture part.
Fabulous. Okay, so this was just an award service that we had for this particular program. The black suited man standing in the middle was at the time the mayor of Salt Lake County. And one of the things that the county really appreciated and enjoyed about this program is that we also utilized county partners to help us to run this program. You can see several members here of the sheriff's, the jail's staff, and the jail was interested in restarting a jail horticulture program. And we're always looking for good opportunities to have good PR coming out of the jail system, since there's oftentimes negative PR that comes from it. And so they looked at this as an opportunity, as a way to have some positive impact back to the community, and something that would bring a positive light to some of these jail programs. And so they were some of our early partners on this particular program. Okay. Hopefully we are advancing through. Okay. Is that still showing up okay, Melanie?
Yep.
Fabulous.
Totally.
Okay. So we needed to revision our efforts here a little bit, and we started talking to Salt Lake County Adult and Aging Services. And Salt Lake County manages 18 senior centers that are located throughout Salt Lake County. So there are quite a few of them. There are actually like 16 cities in Salt Lake County, and so there's quite a few senior centers associated with the county countywide. Starting in 2016, the Master Gardeners started partnering with multiple partners to pilot the free farmers markets. We'll identify some of those here in a minute. And initially, each center, so each of the 18 centers, was visited multiple times. And what we were trying to gauge was need and interest of the clientele. Sometimes also interest and the level of interest from the center staff in helping us to host these markets, because we knew we weren't going to be successful in just showing up and giving away produce. We really needed the buy-in of the clientele and the center staff as well. And so we went to each center multiple times. And, the markets would look something kind of like this. This is Midvale Senior Center. And, the patrons were always very, very interested in seeing what it is that we brought from market to market. We found some of the centers were busier than others. We'll get into some of those details here in a minute, but basically the center would help us by setting up tables. They would advertise the markets for us. Sometimes they helped us with a little bit of crowd control as well. So we tend to get sort of stampeded sometimes when we're bringing things in. People want to be kind of first to get to it. So we've used a few different techniques with that. Probably one of the best is we have a number system where the center coordinators will kind of hand out randomized numbers to the patrons, and they'll call them up in number batches. And so we can kind of make sure that we're keeping the centers safe and everybody is, as in an organized way, getting access to taking home fresh produce. This is South Jordan Senior Center. Actually the picture on the far side here is, I believe, Columbus Senior Center. And it's interesting, you'll see in some of these pictures that we tend to have some ethnic communities of seniors that populate certain centers. So it was also helpful going to each of the centers because we were able to kind of identify who those ethnic communities were. And we actually would bring things particularly interesting to some of those folks based on different cuisines and ingredients that they were used to cooking with. This is Liberty Center here. Liberty Center is one of the ones that we focus on. This is, of all the centers in Salt Lake County, the one with probably the highest food insecurity risk of the patrons that frequent this center. Liberty it's a downtown center. It has very high need by low income seniors because it is surrounded by low income housing apartment complexes. Most of these seniors, they actually walk over to Liberty Senior Center And so some of them, I would say probably a lot of them don't, we've never surveyed them for it, but just through conversation and just watching kind of the dynamics of the center, we definitely picked up on the fact that a lot of these seniors probably don't own cars. They may not be able to drive cars. And so they really do have limited options in terms of their acquisition of fresh produce. And so this is one of the reasons of many of the reasons why we kind of focus on markets at this particular center. I also want to just make a connection here that mobility or transportation capabilities are connected. Studies have shown to personal independence, well-being, and quality of life. And so that's one of the reasons why this particular program servicing these types of centers is so important to the county, because the county has a vested interest in helping these seniors to live a high quality life late into their years and to maintain their independence. This is Columbus Senior Center. This one is located not too far from my office, actually. And Columbus is kind of cool because it has a very high population of Burmese and Bhutanese seniors. These patrons are coming to the center primarily to take advantage of ESL classes, or English as a second language classes. It's a very, very tight-knit community, and that can be very helpful for us because we find that sometimes these tight-knit communities of seniors, whether they're living together in the same housing complex or they just live near one another and interact socially often, they do a great job of food sharing for us. And so we'll oftentimes have these seniors that come to us and say, you know, Sally just had surgery the other week. She isn't able to come down to the market, but I know she really loves to cook with this. We're good friends. Would it be okay for me to take some produce back to her? And our answer is, if we have enough, is always yes, absolutely, no problem. We're not giving out $100 bills at these markets where we are giving out zucchini and tomatoes and onions and things like that. And so it's a great way that we can kind of, even though we're not necessarily delivering it directly to some of those consumers, the food is still getting to them. There's very little food waste because the patrons are kind of shopping and sharing the produce amongst themselves. And so that's kind of been sort of a discovered kind of asset to this particular type of setup of the program, because we like the fact that very little of this produce is going to waste. This is looking out actually my office building, kind of looking out the parking lot. So I would park in that parking lot, for example, to access my building. And that building, set off a little bit, that high rise is a low income senior housing unit. And so this has been really nice to identify these types of locations, because whenever I have excess or I have just a little bit of produce that I need to have delivered quickly, I can take it to places like this and put it in lobbies and let the patrons kind of come through and just collect whatever they want, take up with them. Because the seniors tend to share in excess, they also communicate well with one another. I don't really have to advertise these drop-offs with them. Anytime I come into the lobby and start laying out produce for people to take with them, I find immediately people are getting on their cell phones. They're calling each other, and really it's in a matter of 2 or 3 minutes that I start to see seniors coming down through the elevators. And so they really help to get the info, get the message out there, spread the word that there's free produce available for pickup. This is another example of that. This is St. Mark's Tower. This is a high-rise, low-income senior housing apartment complex that's located very close to Liberty Senior Center. A lot of these seniors do come over to Liberty and they do take advantage of our markets. But I think it's important to talk to your patrons too, specifically about their needs or things that they can tell you to help you to improve your program. And we had a senior at Liberty Senior Center actually that told us about these high rises. And the senior told us that there were a lot of seniors that lived in those apartment complexes that didn't necessarily frequent Liberty Senior Center. So that was really helpful. We knew that if we had excess produce that was still available after our markets wasn't picked up, our seniors, we could drop it off here, and there would be a different group of seniors that would be interested in picking up some produce and taking it back with them. These high rises, you know, they have air conditioned lobbies, so perishable stuff holds on for a little while. As long as it's gone by the end of the day, usually it stays in pretty good shape. It's very, very easy to drop off. As I mentioned before, their senior tenants are not serviced by adjacent senior centers. As we mentioned, the transportation issues, a lot of these folks have very limited options in terms of their acquisition. And keep in mind too, since they are low income, grocery delivery services might not be a fiscally reasonable solution for them, or ride shares. They may not own their own car. They might be a little hesitant to take public transportation. So really bringing it to them is a really great way to make sure that they have access to it, and they can take it to cook. They have apartments with kitchens, refrigerators, and as we mentioned earlier, this sort of setup means that there's minimal food waste. And I would ask the staffing of these high rises and say, how much of this is going to waste, or what are people not taking? Because I don't want to bring it if people aren't going to take it. And most of the reports I got back were that it was all gone by the end of the day. So it's pretty successful that way. So just doing some countywide evaluation. We had master gardeners that surveyed seniors after they picked up produce at farmers markets, and some evaluation results found that most of our patrons did not currently grow their own produce. Many of them were gardeners in the past, but they didn't have the ability to, which makes sense that a lot of these folks too are apartment dwellers. Some patrons depend on food banks and food pantries, but have limited consumption of raw produce. Sometimes the offerings of fresh produce through food banks and food pantries is quite limited. It might be limited to dried or canned or things like that. Some patrons live in apartments and group housing. And so actually something I didn't think about, but I think is significant, is that many of these seniors are feeding other family members. So it's not just them. Oops, sorry about that. So here's some of our contributing partners. I talked a bit about Wheeler Historic Farm, which is a Salt Lake County Parks and Recreation owned and maintained facility. They give us growing space to grow a variety of things. The Salt Lake County Jail Horticulture Program, and those of you that came to the 2017 AMPIC in Salt Lake City, if you did the urban farming tour, you got a chance to go visit this farm site. They have a little over an acre. I'll show you a picture in a minute. They're a contributing partner as well, the Green Urban Lunchbox. They oversee the Salt Lake City Fruit Share program. So it's a way in which we can have some fruit, fresh fruit that's brought into the program. And then as master gardeners, I open up for volunteer service opportunities that they can do something called Grow Row for Senior, where they can donate excess produce from their backyard gardens to help to support our senior center farmers markets. So some pictures. There's the Jail Horticulture Program. That's an aerial of their field site. They do a beautiful job out there and grow a vast array of different types of consumables, fresh fruits and vegetables. This is our famous bean tunnel at Wheeler Farm. The public likes to come through. A little bit of vertical gardening there. We also have some planting beds under plastic as well. And some of our market offerings from previous years. We grow flowers as well. Sometimes we'll take those to the markets, which some of the patrons really enjoy. So a lot of different offerings there. We will sometimes have work days where master gardeners can come and help us to maintain these areas. They enjoy it very much. I think they like working together. They like working in kind of a farm type of a setting. It is beautiful out there, and so it's a nice opportunity for them to get in some of their volunteer service hours. And then I just have a picture of a raised bed here because it's just as a reminder that they can grow extra produce through home gardens as well to donate to our program. So here's just kind of a look at what we were able to accomplish in 2018 to 2021. Just maybe just sort of look at the totals here. Doing a market value, and we tried to come up with our market value through USDA Agriculture Marketing Service, specialty crop reports that are published online. And so we did our best to try to find what we felt like was an appropriate value for the donated produce. It was close to about $75,000 worth of produce collectively over those years, about 120 markets. I know we hit by 2022, servicing about 7,000 seniors and about 36,000 pounds of produce. And although we have our markets at 121, remember we're doing a lot of drop-offs as well. So likely the number of seniors we're actually reaching is quite a bit higher than that number, because we don't know how many seniors are coming and picking up from our drop-off locations. So just a few pictures here, and I want to just this box of produce in particular, I want to highlight that this was a patron that approached us that was really interested in our program. And she just sort of voluntarily shared with us that she was prioritizing car payments and rent payments over food costs. And so she really, really appreciated the program because it really helped to give her access to fresh fruits and vegetables and help supplement or help her meet her food acquisition needs, because she was struggling month to month to have enough money at the end of the month after her bills for buying fresh food. So we have all kinds of little stories like that are great to hear and support the impact that this program is having on some of our patrons. Again, this is Columbus Senior Center with our Burmese and Bhutanese seniors. They are about the most fun people to service on the face of the planet. And this is a great example of a community, very tight-knit community that cooks for a crowd. So there will be certain things. I know that I can bring grocery bags full of basil to markets at Columbus Senior Center, and it's gone. Every little last leaf of basil is gone by the end of the market, where if I tried to take that to some of our other senior centers, that kind of abundance wouldn't be taken care of, or wouldn't be taken advantage of. So understanding the innuendos and the differences between the centers is been kind of fun to sort of figure out over the years, and we've gotten better, and I think it works well when you do kind of understand that with your different populations you're serving. Okay, so of the two centers that we frequent most often, so that's why our evaluation number is lower, we did do some additional surveys, and we found that 19% of the patrons reported a monthly income of less than $1,000 a month. And so for a one-person household, this is poverty level, okay? 22% reported greater than 1,000, but less than 2,000. And so this would be poverty level for 2 to 3 person household. And about 17% reported less than 3,000 monthly, which would be poverty level for a 4 to 6 person household. We did not ask them household size, but we do know that we were servicing low income seniors based on these numbers. 94% of them stated the markets helped them save money at the grocery store, and 99% stated that produce increased their consumption of fresh fruits and vegetables. So this is what the pandemic felt like for me. March of 2022, came in like a lion and out like an apocalyptic four-headed green dragon lion. I'm sure many of your programs felt the same way, but because we had sort of those tight-knit connections and working with those partners, we were able to adapt and make this program continue to work during the pandemic. There were reports from multiple sources that seniors were disproportionately affected by COVID-19. Things like social isolation, loneliness, depression, and fear of death were some of the increased risks to this particular demographic. Here in Utah, a little over 70% of the COVID-19 related deaths were seniors of 65 years of age and older. It's also really important, I think, to just remember that for some seniors, who visit these senior centers, that prepared lunch through the senior center is their primary meal of the day. And we would see this actually, in particular at Liberty, during COVID-19, they would open lunch hour at 10 o'clock in the morning or start giving out. And they were giving out almost like TV dinner lunches. And so it was sort of a reheat lunch that the seniors could take back, and they could heat it up and eat it. And we would see seniors that would come at 10, and they were coming hungry. That was their first meal of the day. And so that was a little eye-opening as well. And COVID-19 disrupted seniors' access to fresh fruits and vegetables. And so I think we've already talked about a lot of these. The senior centers, the buildings themselves did close in spring of 2020 in Salt Lake County, which contributed to a loss of socialization and certain types of exercise programs that the seniors were used to participating in. But as I mentioned before, these TV dinner style meals, it's the same meals that go out on the Meals on Wheels trucks, were available via outdoor drive-through pickup. And so this gave us the opportunity to adapt our markets to outdoor produce stands. So we had these drive-through no contact produce stands, and volunteers would stay masked and social distance. And we would basically ask the seniors from a distance what they would like to take. We tell them what we had. We would package it up for them. And then we would put it in the car wherever they want to, whether the trunk or the back seat or whatever. And it was also a really nice opportunity for our volunteers in a safe way during the pandemic to socialize a little bit with the seniors. There was lots of chit-chatting when there was time for it. And lots of explaining of different produce options too. And so we would successfully get seniors to take some unique produce offerings during these markets. So it really worked well to move this program outdoors. I know there were a lot of other extension programs that made a similar adaptation for some of their outreach as well during the pandemic. So this is my car. It's packed for a market. And what we saw during COVID was that the demand went way up. We saw way more patrons than we were seeing in previous years, so more service seniors. We tried to increase the number of markets that we offered because we knew that need was going up. And you can see a shift between the 2020 numbers and the 2021 numbers, primarily in that we stopped trying to do so many manned markets, and we started doing more drop-offs because we realized it was a more efficient way for us to disseminate the produce. It took less of my time, staff time, less coordination, and so that was one major shift that we made, basically because 2020 just about killed us. We were trying to do too much for too many people, and so we knew we needed to make some adjustments to that so we could keep it manageable for our staff and our volunteers to keep up with. Okay, and in a minute, I'm going to bring Melanie back into this conversation too, because she and I have been talking a little bit about moving forward, but I just wanted to mention some of our lessons learned. Certainly that we were able to adapt to outdoor produce stands and drop-off locations to keep the program running during COVID-19. As you can, I'm sure, assume, USU Risk Assessment was not excited about me doing a program for seniors during the pandemic. But what was kind of cool about it is we were able to figure out how to continue to run it in a safe way. And at the end of the day, they found it to be an essential program. And so they asked us to continue just to be very, very, very careful in how we were doing that. So we kept everybody safe. Master gardeners are an excellent produce source of produce distributors or distribution. I think a lot of times we see produce donation programs through extension where produce is being donated to food banks or food drives. And I think that those are great places to send it. However, what we found with master gardeners is they're educated on different types of garden produce. Oftentimes they have tried eating the produce themselves, and so they're familiar with it. They're familiar with how to cook it, sometimes how to preserve it. And so and sometimes with these food drives or these food banks, the staffing isn't necessarily familiar with different types of produce or how to prepare it. And so the master gardeners are really able to kind of provide that great sort of educational background and to help the recipient better understand what it is that they're cooking with. And we found this with the markets, in that we had seniors that were taking stuff that they weren't familiar eating and trying it and liking it and coming back and asking for it again in the following weeks. And so that was really kind of a nice surprise, and it worked out well for us. Low-income food insecure seniors are a very deserving audience for extension programs. I don't know if they're nationally overlooked. I know we do a lot of programs for youth in particular, and then a lot of my programs kind of service sort of mid-age clients, either through Master Gardener program or some of those sorts of things. I do think that extension focused programs on seniors is very, very important. And so that's definitely a population that I would love to see more programs kind of servicing and benefiting. And for us, networks and partnerships were vital for long-term program sustainability. We got really lucky that our program was well established. We had those partnerships in place. And so we really were a right program at the right time to be able to adapt our program and continue to provide a positive impact for our volunteers. I also want to just quickly make a note that a lot of our volunteers commented they appreciated this program during COVID because it gave them a way that they could continue to provide impactful volunteer service through the Master Gardener program. If it was giving out produce during the markets, or we had several volunteers actually that were high risk themselves, or told us that, and they said they appreciated being able to grow backyard garden produce to give out during the pandemic, because it gave them a way to continue to provide volunteer service, impactful volunteer service, but still feel safe themselves, that they weren't putting themselves, their health in jeopardy. So that was good. One thing that I do think on a national level that could be helpful moving forward is if you are doing food donation programs, I like the neighbors feeding neighbors approach. And potentially if in the beginning of the growing season, folks can identify families or members in their community, whether it's through faith-based organizations or school organizations or whatever it may be, maybe growing excess produce for that family and helping them. So kind of that pre-identification of who are those people, and then going ahead and doing that garden planning so you can produce a little extra to be able to give to those folks to offset some of their needs throughout the growing season. We may be looking for additional ways that we can incorporate that into the Salt Lake County Master Gardener program in future years. So with that, that is my contact. And you are more than welcome to reach out to me with any questions, or if you want to just talk about what you're doing, that's awesome too. I love to learn from other people. And I want to bring Melanie back in here. And just some of the short-term and long-term kind of ideas we have moving forward based on the experience with this program. We definitely feel like there is a opportunity to bring in more of the food preservation and nutrition and preparation type of education into the program. And so one idea we had is kind of a train the trainer class, where Melanie's food and nutrition educators were training master gardeners. We set it up as saying that this is going to help you when you go to the markets to be able to educate the patrons, the seniors, on what they're taking and different things that they can do with it. But I also think too, just within master gardeners, there's probably a lot of personal interest amongst them for this type of education. So we felt like there would be an opportunity there, and that's probably something we're going to try in the 2023 calendar year. And long-term wise, I guess she and I both sort of made a connection in thinking, why on earth are we not, maybe I'm being a little self-critical here, Salt Lake County. I'm sure that there are a lot of other extension programs that are doing a really good job of this. And I need to maybe spend a little time educating myself, or if you're doing this, please reach out to me and tell me what you're doing. But incorporating more food and nutrition education into the actual garden master gardener either manual and or supplemental resources themselves. And so I don't know why we're not taking more advantage, I guess is what I'm trying to say, of some of our food and nutrition educators and bringing that information into the Master Gardener program. Because again, I think there's a lot of interest amongst Master Gardeners for that type of information. And we know when we train our Master Gardeners that we're spider webbing, networking information across the community. Master gardeners are talking to neighbors, they're talking to their family members, they're talking to friends, they're talking to people in different types of organizations. They might be going to farmers markets and doing booths or doing public classes and things like that. So the more of that type of information that we can maybe give to them, that they're going to be more successful in terms of disseminating that out into the broader public. So I do want to bring Melanie back in for some of her thoughts and comments about ways that she thinks specifically with her programs and her staff that we can maybe be successful in some of these ideas moving forward.
Yeah, some other things we've talked about. So I supervise a SNAP Ed program in Salt Lake County, which is often through extension around the country. There's also FNEP program that might be available in your offices maybe as well. And there have been some opportunities we've had to work with food pantries, particularly the VA hospital has a food pantry, and they reached out to us a couple years ago and really wanted just like a brief, like kind of like a fact sheet, just an information sheet on like, here's this vegetable, here's some ways to cook it, here's how to eat it fresh, here's how to store it, and maybe a recipe or two. And we've talked about doing things like that as well. Kate, I mean, you saw the pictures Katie showed. She is growing a ton of different produce, and it's not just your traditional, tomatoes and lettuce or whatever. So that brings in like an element of a challenge because there's so many different things to do. And she's done a really good job, as she mentioned already, like finding the places, the audiences that want those certain foods and are gobbled up pretty quickly. But that could be a need in your community where maybe more of that education is needed or could be implemented to help them use the food, eat the food, and then not waste it as well. So that's an idea. There's also ways that we could have like my nutrition educators work more with even the drop-offs and talking and interacting. It just presents a challenge on my end because she's at so many during the week and my staff isn't, like, I just don't have enough manpower for that, which is why we're thinking of doing this training program for the Master Gardener so that they can help answer more questions about nutrition and food. And there have been times in the past where Katie has referred me to different entities where I've done food preservation trainings. For example, I've done a few times at the Salt Lake County Jail horticulture program for some of the inmates that will be leaving the jail soon. And I've trained them on food preservation because they all express an interest in keeping their gardening habits when they leave the jail. And that's another step too, is the food preservation. So those are some ideas we've talked about. We'd love to hear in chat if you guys have ideas on how you've partnered or like collaborated with other programming areas in your office. Or I guess you can unmute yourself. Thanks, Scott, for letting those guys in.
Yes, please, anybody who is a participant on this, if you want to share anything that you have found of comparable programs that have worked well for you or ideas that maybe you thought about during this presentation, it would be awesome to hear from you because it's nice to learn from each other.
Another aspect of this, and Katie's run into this quite a few times at work, and I think this is why she's settled on the markets where she can give the food out and people are taking it. But a lot of challenge to food pantries and food banks is that they don't have the refrigeration or the storage to take the fresh produce. And that's something else SNAP Ed can help with. They've got an arm in their programming that's just trying to help the healthy choice be the easier choice among those SNAP users. So they've they've got resources, and if your local office it doesn't do that, nationally they're working on ways to help food pantries be able to take donations like these. Another thing we've done in our nutrition program is we'll have a farmers market booth, but instead of us giving out something, we are actually taking donations and we've given it to food banks. And so we'll work with food banks that either have the storage or we take it to them the day they're giving out. And that has a lot of potential for growth as well. So then they don't have to store it for long term. That's another idea too. If not all communities are like Salt Lake. And how many senior centers do we have, Katie?
Yeah, so we have 18 across the county, which is quite a few. And when we did that initial sort of assessment of centers, the seniors were always very gracious of us being there, but we would flat out walk into centers sometimes and bring our produce, and seniors would come up and just being kind and welcoming us there and everything. But they would say, gosh, I wish I knew you were coming today. I just went to the grocery and I stocked up on all of this stuff. That was not our target population for this program. We would love to be able to provide free produce to everybody, but we knew that there was a need, and that it was specifically kind of concentrated in certain centers. And so that's one thing, for example, that was really nice with the jail horticulture program is, we would sometimes get complaints from centers that say, you're doing all these markets for these other centers, but why won't you come to our center? And the reason why is because the need just really wasn't as great in some of these other centers based on the patrons that tend to visit those centers. But the jail horticulture program had kind of a different setup where they made a decision to visit each center throughout the growing season. So they did 18 markets total and would go to a different center each time. So everybody got a chance to enjoy the markets, but then as Master Gardener program Yoshio Extension, we tended to focus a little bit more on those centers that had the higher food insecurity risks. I also want to say, I think one thing that made this program successful just in kind of qualitative evaluation was that we allowed the seniors to take what they wanted to take, and in the abundance that they wanted to take it, if we had enough to provide that for everybody who was coming and visiting us. So we had tried in the past sort of like prepackaged things and just giving out bags or shares. And I don't think that was as successful. I think the seniors really enjoyed quote unquote shopping for their market, even though there was no money exchange in that, and telling us what they wanted. It also was a great opportunity for us to talk them into taking certain types of things that they probably normally wouldn't have taken. And that was a lot of fun for the volunteers as well, that they enjoyed that kind of conversation with the seniors and exchanging that kind of information. Does anybody else have any comments or questions? Or Melanie, do you have anything that you would like to add?
No, I don't think so.
Maybe just give it another minute or two. If anybody wants to chime in, don't be shy. Like I said, if you were a little later joining, this program is published in the most recent Journal of NACA, Volume 15, Issue 2. It's the December of 2022. So feel free to access that if you'd like to go back and see some more details about it. Or I know Melanie and I would both be thrilled to talk to anybody too that would like some additional information about the program, or maybe just want to talk about some of the ways that we've done things, or some of the things that you've experienced through your programs that have worked well. Okay, well, with that, I think we've concluded for today. So I want to thank everybody for coming today, and hope I get a chance to see you soon, hopefully at a NACA AMPIC coming up. So thanks again for coming.